when we move away from equal weights to any form of weighted averaging, we need to ask ourselves what the purpose is. And whether the weights that are applied, for example, if you apply variance-based weights or you apply population weights, are you actually then still talking about a meta-analysis? I think that's an important concept that needs to be discussed. Because once you apply population weights as you apply in standardization, I don't think we can really talk about it as a meta-analysis anymore.
Why would you say that? Because it's also combining data from different studies.
That's right, but if the purpose of meta-analysis is to try and estimate a common population parameter of some sort, regardless of how it's defined, with standardization, you have a completely different purpose, which is to maybe generate a net effect for a diverse population.
Well, I guess the point I wanted to make is that different studies would typically report different effects, because the effects are always conditional on what kind of population we are really studying, and that determines the magnitude of the effects. So I guess the point I was trying to make is that currently we're just taking weighted averages of different results, even different effect measures from different studies. And with the standardization, I try to map everything on the same effect measure and then pull those, which in my opinion seems a more sensible strategy.
Thank you very much, Alicia Mortensen. You know, it was very interesting. I work with animal studies and conducting animal studies and reporting animal studies for human risk assessment. So in your example, there was something which struck me, because you said you had human studies and animal studies, and in animal studies you talked about at least 3 species. You had, in fact, 2 species, rats and rabbits, but you had 2 strains of rats, and you regarded them as a different species. Then there was this very nice picture showing apple and pear, but in fact you had 2 pairs, 2 types of pears, you know?
Yes,
one
yes.
which is big, and then, of course, maybe if you explained it in your assumption, you could say that there is different susceptibility between Sprague-Dawley rat and Fisher rat, F344. For example, also with development of tumors, what kind of tumors they would develop, to which kind of spontaneous tumors they are more prone. So this would explain. But this little detail, you know, it was in the beginning of your talk. If we can simplify this, or we should also, you know, be more nuances talking about animal species, not putting together strains as a species.
Right,
yeah?
yes, thanks.
Sorry for this remark, huh? But it was very interesting, your presentation, even for such a person who does not do statistics themselves and not try to combine, you know, human data and so on. So it was very, thank you very much. It was very...
Thanks.
Yeah, it's important to split the pairs sometimes. One more question in the back.
Thank you. Thank you for the interesting presentation. My question is actually connected to the first one which Katja asked about, you know, PBPK modeling. So I want to go further. Actually, now there is a movement to go away from animal testing to in vitro testing. So you would do in vitro tests with human cells, so you're a little bit connected to humans, but you are doing it with one cell and not with the whole organism, which is again a big problem with extrapolation. So my question was, you said combining humans and animals is a dangerous business. So can you comment on combining in vitro evidence, even if we use like in vitro to in vivo extrapolation, things like this, with human evidence, and how can we move forward there? Because that's one big area.
It's a good point, but I don't think I'm very competent to comment on in vitro or in vivo studies. I'm looking at this as a statistician, it looks dangerous when I look at the first meta-analysis, where we had log odds ratios reported from different papers, some animal studies, some human studies. It seems tricky business to just take averages of those results from the different studies without, I mean, I wonder, what does the summary refer to? Is it now a mix? I'm trying to, I like to be clear. If the focus is on humans, then what kind of humans? And then how can does it really make sense to average results from humans with those from animals? Looking at it from a distance, I would say no, but I can imagine that there are settings where extrapolation is possible, at least hopefully it is. Yeah, but I don't think I'm competent to judge how well we are able to do that.
I think we saw one more question. Yeah.
Just briefly, and responding to that last point, isn't the kernel of an answer somewhere in what you said in your talk about needing to build a prediction model? That in fact the focus of interest is usually the humans in the end in the context of this meeting.
Yes.
And so what's needed is to build that prediction model relating the other types of evidence you have to the thing that you're really interested in.
Exactly.
And then find appropriate ways to populate that, whether it's from expert judgment or from data or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And although that's a difficult process, and when you try to do it as you've illustrated with a very simple example, you uncover some quite tricky assumptions that you need to make or judgments that need to be made. Isn't it the fact that those judgments and assumptions are still buried in any more qualitative approach to doing the same thing? If you do it with scoring methods and so on, as we've heard about earlier on, the same problems are still present, but they're just hidden from view because they've not been made explicit.
Exactly, yes.
And they're not being treated in a formal way. And again, it sort of links back to what Professor Rubin said at the beginning, that being quantitative helps the discussion, helps you to have an objective discussion about what it is you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, these are the questions that we're dealing with at EBTC in our working groups and systematic reviews. So welcome to contact us if you're interested in working on some of those issues that we don't have solutions for. So I guess we go for a break. Yeah. So we get back in less than half an hour at 11:45 and restart. Thank you so much. Thank you all the speakers.